Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh Christmas tree.
How passe this song is when everyone finally hears this episode.
Yeah, just so you know, it's Christmas Eve for Greg and I, and it's the day after Boxing Day for y'all,
Yeah.
which is kind of like the lull, like the big ebb,
And it's the last episode of 2021 for Moped Outlaws.
right? So it's been a great year. Moped Outlaws was born this year. That means it was like the tops as far as years go. And um, yeah, forget all that other nonsense that might be on your mind that might make you think that 2021 was a shitty year.
Yeah.
This isn't our necessarily our New Year's program because we're going to do that on New Year's Eve,
Right.
which will also be on the Monday following, so it'll be just as passe. So you could say that you're doing better than Moped Outlaws because we're starting our year as 3 days passe.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I notice in life that I'm like 3 years behind the trends. So like I'm like, oh yeah, Miley Cyrus
Oh my God.
working.
Oh my God. That is sad to me.
Don't judge.
Do you like Miley Cyrus?
I like her. Yes, I think her kind of chutzpah is refreshing.
I agree. And she's a fucking powerful singer.
Yeah, and she's sort of moved through the crazy psychedelic phase of her career, and now she's reached the I better do some ads or I might run out of money stage.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think she's doing fine financially. I
Um,
like that
hey,
hippie album she did with I just spaced out the name of the band.
Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds from that record is amazing.
Yeah, the whole record's amazing.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything else, but yeah,
Yeah, I like pot. Yeah, I like peace. But that doesn't mean I'm a fucking hippie. Do it. Yeah.
that's awful.
Yeah. Who want gosh darn it.
We must ask the Googles.
That's very sad to me. Come on. That's one of my favorite bands. Flaming Lips.
Oh, that's right, the Bubble Boys.
Yeah, that's who she did that with.
They were
And
one of
by
the
the way, that wasn't Google that gave that to me. It came to me by my.
wow. Apparently, I touched a nerve. Would you like me to go a little lower?
Sure. Wait a minute here. Missile camel toe.
That's hilarious. I'd like to get underneath some of that.
Yeah, you would. Well, maybe that Christmas blessing is in your stocking.
Yeah, I sure hope so.
Uh,
I'll be dancing with visions of sugar plums in my head.
yeah.
Yeah, got a
All
tea
right.
bag full of sugar plums.
So I do have a quiz for you.
Yeah, is that it? Is that all we're doing today? I totally forgot what our production.
What? It was supposed to be like the strong elements of this past year for us. Like what? Like, because we did our top five of, holiday mood, but this was going to be our top.
Our
What were some
moments in,
things?
in 2021.
Right, right, right. All right, let's start with that.
All right, well, I got to go with the inauguration of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Ah,
Like that
ah.
really made a big impact for me. I was very happy about that.
All right. All right. All right.
How about you? I got more, but let's trade them.
Um, Neil's work on the room downstairs for my son to move into.
So,
And
for those of you who don't know, Neil Osborne is an amazingly gifted artist and lyricist,
craftsman, yeah.
craftsman, and social outsider.
Yeah,
He
I
doesn't.
don't know about that. I think I don't think that's his choice. I think perhaps socially people see him and don't know him and make a judgment about who he
You're
is.
misunderstanding what I meant by social outsider. Another way to put that is someone who follows his own muse.
Yeah, he definitely marches to his own drum beat. Yep.
which makes him a unique and wonderful flavor to encounter. So yeah, I can see why you would appreciate that.
Yeah. And the whole thing with my son moving in, it's a fucking awesome room. And just all the work and love that went into that. And I was just thinking this morning, in fact, like how grateful I was that Candy has this home and my son has a home here. And
Yeah. And you went
yeah,
Christmas caroling with Neil too, didn't you? Or did
yeah,
you?
that's our tradition every winter solstice. And we had a good turnout. We had 4 adults and 2 children, and we had homemade brownies at the last house.
Nice.
They were hella good.
Yeah. Is that like your number two of the year, or
Oh, good point. It's such a tradition. That's like, that's a good thing. I don't know. I don't like I feel I kind of have to work at this. Nothing really comes up like, yeah, even the thing with Neil and my son, I'm grateful. Why don't you go?
yeah,
I'm
what's my turn?
struggling here.
I kind of sandbagged you there by asking if that was number two.
No, not really. It just like even before I mentioned the room, I was kind of thinking, I don't know. I don't have any highlights. Not like, oh, 2021 was horrible. Just what are highlights,
Well, you could look at them as highlights, or you could look at them as peak experiences, like experiences that resonate with you as like joyful, or that really, you know, provide a strong sense of gratitude and joie de vivre, inspiration. A bright light on the the year. So my next one, if I can remember, I knew it 3 seconds ago. Um,
We are getting old.
was when the vaccine levels got to the point where I could start rehearsing with musicians again in the studio. And so I rejoined a band that plays all cover songs, a band called The Upbeats. And a lot of it's like 80s, 70s, 90s, like boomer songs, like Eagle songs and Frampton songs and stuff like that. And so being able to stand in a room of musicians and be a lead guitarist so that I don't have to hold down any of that other structure and like play notes on my guitar. That is just such a satisfying and enriching emotional and visceral experience. And to do that with one of my lifelong friends, Tomas, who I've known since I was 14, is a real gift. And so, every week getting in the room with him and playing those tunes is a real highlight, a real positive feeling. And so I'm really grateful that that's been happening. And to sort of close out this last week, I brought in this piece of equipment that I hadn't been using. That is the thing that Frampton uses to make that weird wah sound.
The talking box.
The talk box. And so I used that last week for "Show Me the Way."
Oh wow.
Wah wah
Do we
wah.
feel like no, that's do we
That's
feel
"Do
like
You
we
Feel
do?
Like We Do."
Yeah.
I'm gonna work that one up too, but it's a cool effect, and it's sort of a lot
Yes.
of guitarists don't use it. He's like the only guy that I know of on a record that's used it.
Joe Perry.
Oh, Joe Perry's done some stuff too, and
Just what was that song? I think it was Sweet Emotion. He uses it.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So it was fun, and they anytime a guitarist can like make a sound that people don't hear often, it's always a win.
Yeah.
Because guitars are getting really passe on some level.
Hey, do you like Adrian Belew?
I respect him. I don't really own any of his records, and I watched the King Crimson show. Like he toured with King Crimson this year, and it's a little bit mind jazzy for me, but I respect the technique and the vision that goes into it. But it doesn't really grab me in my emotional center very much.
one of my favorite artists is Laurie Anderson. And there's a famous story about her meeting Adrian Belew and her not really interested. Like, I don't really like electric guitars. That's not what I do. And he said, well, let me just play something for you. And he played something. She thought, that's not a fucking guitar. That's an animal. Cause he's on one of her albums and he was making these monstrous animal noises, just
Yeah, yeah.
going deep into the guts. And so,
Well, that is true of him. He has his own unique approach and a complexity to the flavors that he can offer, which is very respectable.
yeah,
Absolutely.
if there's an album, like an entry album for him, I'd say he's got an album called Twain Bar King.
Twang
That's,
Bar King, what a great
yeah,
album. All right.
yeah, and it's pretty rad.
So yeah, that's another highlight aside from what was the first one I said?
The insurrection.
Oh no, not that. The inauguration, then playing music with my buddies. That's
Are
number.
you guys going to play live?
Well, we talked about it. 2022 is still a question mark for musicians.
Yeah, Sweetwater just shut down 2 days ago, 3 days
Right.
ago. Yeah, I'm bummed, man. There's a concert that I have tickets to that I'm super looking forward to.
Which is
Um, now I'm just gonna Tommy Emmanuel,
oh,
and he's playing with. I always forget the other guy's name. They've done a couple things together. And the other guy's a monster too, like two crazy monsters that are just so fun. And it's at Freight and Salvage.
yeah. Well, we'll see what happens.
Man.
What's your next highlight or high point of 2021?
I don't know. There's an element, I think, like you said something earlier about gratitude, and that seems more to me what I'd go for. Like, there's a birthday party that I went to that was a lot of fun. I'm really grateful for the friendship that I have with that person and being able to celebrate with people because it was at a time when COVID was kind of keeping people indoors. That seems more about 2021, like things that I'm grateful for. Like highlights, I don't.
So this birthday party.
Yeah, so the birthday party, my family, I'm
Well, don't do
very
them
grateful
all.
for. What?
Don't do them all. When was the birthday party?
When was it?
Yeah.
It was summertime, so it was, really like good music, dancing, hanging out outside. It was warm. Um, so yeah, that was nice. Good people, good conversation, just felt warm and welcome. And part of, I think, why it stands out is there was a part of me, I think, that used to be alive. Oh, what the hell is this? Where I would feel unwelcome at parties. And I know it was my own thing. So to see that mentally or emotionally I've evolved to a place where now I feel welcomed at parties. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool, man.
Yeah, that's great.
All right, what's your next?
Um, well, I have to say the A Course in Miracles. Like this was my first year of having a relationship with that work, and that's been very impactful. And it's really interesting because it's not like there's this one moment where I went to the party and there was this huge epiphany. Like there's this kind of subtlety about it that has me feeling less threatened, less anxious, less Shempa in my life.
Yeah, it is interesting because I come across people who are so wound up about something. And it's like, well, why do you want to live like that? And I get upset but I also believe like I let it go quick. Like the next moment, like I could be mad at you right now, but 2 minutes, that's done. That's not real right now.
Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure there are, well, as you mentioned, like it's a process, it's an ongoing, there is no epiphany. So there are still people that I think about. And Christmas is a good time to kind of bring everyone into one's thoughts and release, forgive, let go. Like just we're all one. That's the goal.
Mm.
So yeah, there's a couple people I was like, okay, I still got a little bit of champagne with cocktail sauce. But
Yeah, so we've each identified two, or I've identified three, and you've identified two. What's like the next one?
well, here's the thing. Like I'm grateful for things that started this year. I'm grateful for Moped Outlaws
Okay, that can
and
be.
the evolution of the process and how it keeps evolving, getting tighter, better. I'm also grateful for not starting, but getting involved with community reusables. And we just ordered 1,000 cups. So like it's really happening.
Meaning,
Meaning and purpose. Yes. Russian Mark has brought meaning and purpose to the conversation. Man,
you
well, I
ordered a
guess
1,000 cups. What are you going to do with them?
throw them at cars on the highway.
Are they
Get
going
off the highway.
to have rocks in them?
No, they're made out of no. So we're in Mill Valley starting to work with businesses, and the goal is you get rid of single-use containers and cups in Mill Valley, and then successful here and move out. And we're starting with cups. So yeah.
Okay. So that's a highlight, is having completed the first stage of that process by ordering.
No, to just be involved with it.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing. It's more like it feels to me like being on this path, like life's this journey. And it's nice to be have gratitude for a journey. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, what I'm realizing is I have more than five, but this is the most present one, so I'm going to speak it. Receiving my second vaccine in March was a game changer. Like it changed my whole sense of fear and opened up the spring for me to feel like life again. And I'd realized how much anxiety and stress that I was holding when I was actually able to let some of it go, and stop washing my Costco goods.
Oh, my heart goes out to you. That's just crazy. That's the thing. Like, I think the worst thing with this COVID has been people's reactions, just so twisted up and angry and twisted and fearful and, uh,
Yeah.
uh
So yeah, being the recipient of my second Pfizer vaccine at the end of March, and then again in November receiving my booster shot.
your
Those are-
third.
yeah. It helps me stay relaxed and like I can confidently go out in the world without a lot of stress.
Nice.
So
Has it helped with in your circle too, like the people you're closely interact with? Has their
depends on who they are. Like some of them, no, because they think it's the devil. They think the vaccine is the devil.
oh. Really?
So that's been more difficulty, right, than less.
Right. That's what I mean. Like that's as twisted as this is, yeah.
And having gone through, I don't want to say 100, but I bet it is close to 100 exchanges on social media and in various ways with people that are about this subject. And what that's done for me in terms of my ability to be present for what people, what I disagree with people on without making them wrong. Because I've viewed a bunch of people who make each other wrong. And a big part of 2021 was the social media condemnation and shaming and fear mongering that was done on both sides of this issue by people. And that to me is more interesting than which side you sort of fall on. But like, the people were like, "Don't you get this? It's a plot to control us all." And then the other people are, "If you don't get vaccinated, you don't give a shit about anybody but yourself." Like being able to break down my own duality around that issue and no longer occupy a space that has me othering anybody for their choice was a journey. It took me a long time.
Hmm.
Like I'm just getting to the place where the research I've done, particularly that Joe Rogan podcast that we talked about the other day, which fucked with me on a huge level because it confirmed a bunch of the things that anti-vaxxers have been saying about the way this disease has been propagated, which is very uncomfortable because I've been on the pro-vaccine science side of this for a long, long time. And to find out the factual data from a reputable source that there's some real shenanigans that have been going on around preventing treatment and keeping things secret from people,
Right.
it really is hard to hold the cognitive dissonance that goes with that. And so that's a highlight because as a human being, I've gotten a character upgrade as a result of being able to have these conversations with people, right? So for me in 2020, anti-racism work was helping me have the tough conversations, and now 2021, not anti-ing my friends who happen to be not willing to take a vaccine, um, you know, and then also recognizing the persecutorial tendencies of people on both sides of the
Yeah.
issue.
Yeah. And here's the thing with that doctor interview is all the doctors and learned people I've heard talking about elements regarding the vaccine, they all say this is a pandemic. We do have a pandemic. And here's some information about it. And what I thought was interesting in that interview is when he and Joe were talking about how Trump, when he came out about the hydri, I always get the name whacked up.
Hydrochloroquine.
Yeah. And that he had good information, but people's biases against him, just anything he'd say, there was so much anger against him. Everyone would just be like, fuck you. Oh, you're telling us to put bleach in our veins. He just wasn't articulate in saying what the information was, but he had information that could have helped.
So for anyone who wants to learn about this, Joe Rogan's interview with Dr. Peter McCullough is what we're referring to. And it is a game changer for people who think they know the science. And it's uncomfortable, right? But if what you really want is to be scientific, you have to be willing to look at all the data. And what happens is you will soften your antagonism towards people who don't want to get the vaccine because you'll have access to actual science that talks about it.
But here's the thing, he's not telling people just ignore it, don't do anything.
No, he's just talking about how there's all this stuff that we don't have access to as a result of a conscious deception.
Right.
And a failure on the parts of certain government agencies to create the kinds of investigations that would have been, like when we talk about prophylactic treatment, preventative treatment, or early treatment. And now we've got studies. And it's funny because today, as of today, there are 2 treatment pills that have been approved by the FDA. So here we are.
Well, also, it didn't seem like, for the most part, it didn't seem like conscious manipulation. It seemed like it was more irresponsibility and people just not at the beginning engaged in a responsible manner with sharing information and research.
Well, we could go down this rabbit hole. What I'll say is, as someone who was pro-vaccine and not an anti-oxychloroquine or whatever it was, chloroquine,
Right.
and then doubter about ivermectin, it took a long time for me to navigate what was really the real about these treatments, and get past my cognitive dissonance about the polarity of the arguments. And so, that's why I'm saying that this is an important piece to me, is because what's available when we get past our biases and our unwillingness to meet people where they're at because of their ideological differences with us, especially when it's something that seems life threatening, like COVID.
All right, because this is interesting, because with the hermetic, I went through
You mean the Hermetic?
hermetic.
The definition of Hermetics by Franz
Yeah,
Barth.
the hermetic
Hermetic.
man.
Hermaphroditic.
Hermetic.
Abrahammatic.
Anyway, one of the things that he wrote about, is you better have that handy because these questions are coming at you. So, but he was talking about,
we still have 2 more things each to do before we do that. So
about wisdom and knowledge and in essence, waste of time, like pearls before swine. He quoted that quote from Jesus in the Bible of, knowledge like pearls before swine. And he's so because when you talked about, you weren't.
Deep breath, everyone.
Yeah. Something just shook downstairs. That startled it. Anyway, there's an earthquake. But so, like, talk about bias. There's times, like, for the most part, I attempt with everyone. Like, if I'm getting wound up, I'm like, okay, what's going on in me that needs to be healed because I'm triggered. But there's things that I see someone do where I'm like, you are making your life harder. And what I've noticed, so here's a good example, because we spoke about my mom a few episodes ago. And one of the things is when information and conversation would be that's really helpful for her, she would take it as an attack and be defensive.
Right.
So, yes, best to not have our biases and be open to information. But I guess there's also wisdom in recognizing a conversation that isn't productive and just walking away from that person, as Mark has just walked away from me. There he goes out the door. And Moped Outlaws is now a solo podcast.
No, it's not. I'm not going. I just want my hand. I want to be the one on the handlebars this year. Yeah, you might think you want that, but it's actually a lot more nerve-wracking to be the one that has to drive.
I don't know.
It's pretty casual, just kind of ride on the back and throw shit off the back.
Mushrooms falling out of your pocket.
No.
Oh yeah.
The shiitake hit the fan. All right, so are you complete with what you think are your highlights, your things about this year? Or do you have something?
Family, friends.
Okay. So I have 2 more.
Okay.
And they're not in any graduated order, right? So some of the highlights that I had this year were blowjobs, and I really appreciate them. Like, they're definite highlights. And then number 2 is spending the money for Nugs TV to watch Dead and Company play. Like, I watched 6 of their shows this year, and there was some real elevated sensations in my body watching those shows and feeling emotional about songs. It was really great.
All right. Oh, is your partner going to listen to this? She's going to go, blowjobs, plural. I know of one. What the hell's going on here? Oh, now we've crossed the line of, yep. Now Mark has to be silent because all right, those are two good things.
Don't assume you know everything, Greg.
No, that's for sure. That is for sure.
I read a really interesting article about the delineation between blowjobs and the kind of patriarchal version of it. It's like a job. It's a thing you exchange something for, right?
That's great. Fucking someone's ruining blowjobs now.
No. Wait. What they said was that when a woman is really inspired and it's not her job, it's something else altogether, and it's way better. And it's a kind of cock worship. And I'm like, yeah, that's what I want. Like, I don't actually want to have it be a job or an obligation.
Want you to worship my cock is what
I
you
want it to be
just said.
something you adore, something that you give freely and with pleasure for yourself. I'm so glad I brought this up.
So tell me, in that worship process, is swallowing an important part of it?
What does important mean in that sentence?
Like if it's spit, if she spits out your load, is that kind of like, oh wow, or do you not care?
So, as much as I think it's reasonable to have a conversation like this among men, it just feels like at the point in the podcast, I don't feel like we really want to go here.
I'm speaking generally, not in anyone particular. Just
I agree. I understand why, and I just don't think it's actually. I think at this point, people are turning off their radios. Like, I don't think we need to go there.
Well, if they turned off the radios, it's too late.
Maybe they heard me and they didn't. I don't know. It's just, to me, it seems it's not anything I want to talk about.
Okay.
That part of it just doesn't make, like, it was vulnerable for me to share what I shared. And I think the part you're going to, like, we should be able to talk about it as friends and men. I'm cool with that, but not, I don't think Moped Outlaws, I don't think it serves us.
Okay. So we're on to the quiz then.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about this. I'm part of this thing called the Initiate's Path, and we've been studying various things all year. And, you know, part of the year-end third quarter in a year-long process thing is we've been immersed in chapter 1 of a book called The Initiation into Hermetics, which is by Franz Barden. And I've been studying for an exam for that keeps getting pushed back by the teacher. And several students had their oral exam this week, and then mine is coming up.
We weren't talking about blowjobs anymore.
We're not.
You just said that a bunch of students had oral
exams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. That sounds like the same thing to me.
Okay. I get that.
I think Mark's just gonna I like it.
I get that that's where,
like the Buddhist monk, he's just gonna walk through the fire. Okay, Greg, you just do your silly thing.
But anyway, he's gonna quiz me on chapter 1, and you know, we're gonna basically get a pre-sense of how good I know this material based on him picking the hardest things he can think about to quiz me with, or hopefully he's been a little bit easier on me.
No way.
So here we go.
All right, you ready?
No.
So I may pronounce this incorrectly.
Okay.
But what I want to know is like what the English translation of this word is. So what is the principle of Tejas?
Oh, Tejas is fire.
All right.
The element of fire.
Yep. Okay, there's good. That's good. That's correct. Ding. We need a bell. Ding. We got to talk to our producer, man. We need more sound effects.
Well, I have some information for you. I got a friend who's doing his own. He runs like a whole podcast assortment of podcasts, and he has some equipment that we can get that's not expensive. And if we both get them, there's 8 touchpads that we can program with the intro music and some of the sound effects that we want, sample pads.
All right. Which element is the cause or origin of all other elements?
The Akasha, ether.
Yep. Yep. And what is it?
Akasha, or ether.
Ether, right?
The
Etheric.
highest, the mightiest, the most unimaginable, the primordial existence, the original cause. It's spaceless and timeless. It's uncreated. God, the fifth energy.
All right. Which element is created by the interaction of three other elements? And what are those three other elements?
Fire, water, and air combine with themselves to, and then that creates the fourth element, which isn't necessarily a distinct element. It is the earth element, also known as Prithivi. And when earth element comes into being, it is then galvanizes time and space into becoming. So once the earth element is present, time and space come with it.
All right. Okay, so there are 3 for 3 so far. 2 more to go.
Okay.
Okay, now I tried to, like, I thought those 3 would be pretty straightforward. Like that was pretty much the essence
Now
of
it gets
that.
harder.
I hope so. What practice is recommended by Franz Bardon when first waking up in the morning? Yes.
Yeah, I should know this, but I don't. What is it?
Brush your body with a soft brush until your skin turns faintly reddish.
Oh, that's chapter 2.
No, it isn't.
It's chapter 1?
Yeah. Up to, you said up to page 62.
No, up to page 60, I think.
You
But
said
nonetheless, that's valid. I should know it. Yeah, page 62. All right.
Yeah.
So I need to go back and figure that out. I need to
So
read
that's when he's talking about all the body and the different parts of the body. It's right towards the end.
Got it. Thank you.
Welcome.
Now I know there's a weakness in the armor.
Yeah. Chink in the armor. That's not politically correct. You can't say chink anymore.
A defect. Dent
All right, ready?
in the armor. I don't know. After that one, yeah, go ahead.
See, I told you they were going to get harder. Okay, now put the book down. Quit flipping around. What happens to water's properties of magnetism when temperature is increased?
I don't know.
The properties of magnetism diminish. And for extra credit, if you had known at what degrees Fahrenheit is the property neutralized, but I guess that's
What is it?
97 to 99 degrees Fahrenheit.
So the magnetism of water changes as its temperature goes up a certain point.
Yeah, it's
And
diminished.
it loses it becomes non-magnetic at the temperature of 97 degrees Fahrenheit. What's its most constant value? Is that it before? Is it above freezing? Like when is it most
Oh,
magnetic?
yeah. So the colder, yes. So the colder the water, the more the more the property of
Magnetic.
magnetism is.
So ice is even more magnetic than water.
Well, I think
And where is this in the book?
it's again towards the end.
Towards the end of that first chapter,
Yeah.
which is, and he's talking about water.
Yeah. Because he's talking about the things. I think there's there's this one part with all these things with the body.
Mm-hmm.
Well, actually,
Yeah, the etheric. Wow, I really have to go back. These are great questions. Thank you. So the occult anatomy of the body, or no? Do you remember?
no, and I'm looking it up now. But it was something about water, and there's how water, you can use water to attract things to you, and what I thought was surprising is, because he was saying like soaking in cold water is more powerful than
Well, and
hot
that's borne
water.
out by, the Wim Hof stuff, right? We become more
Right,
magnetic.
right.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So yeah, so now I'm not finding.
So those of you who want to follow along at home, we were able to find a copy of this book at archive.org.
Yeah, and you can check it out, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick. We have learned to fire. Oh, I know how to do this. Oh, forget that. So then he goes into like the head, the hands, the abdomen, and then the soul and the astral body, blah blah blah, spirit, blah blah. I'm not gonna find it.
This is great. I'm learning a lot.
Watch me flip through. So though again, there was the part where he's talking about truth that I thought was interesting.
I think one of the most important things that's a takeaway from this moment is that when you don't know something, it's okay to just say you don't know.
It's true.
It's much better. We bullshit people a lot in this life, and integrity matters. And one of the reasons that I've taken on the challenge of trying to learn this first chapter in this book so thoroughly is that it's going to really impact me later if I don't master this stuff.
Look at page 60, the magic of water.
So in my book, on page 60, it's called asceticism.
Do you have a
So it may be that the version of the book you have has different, right? Because you caught me out on some stuff. So
yeah, it could be because actually now I'm looking and it went part 2 practice.
right, see, part 2 is the thing we're not supposed to be in yet.
But I thought that was because actually page 62 on this ends with like a summation of everything up to that point. So I thought, oh, that makes sense that
So can you screen share? Let me
Yeah.
make so you can screen share real quick.
this is exciting. Oh, you disabled it. Exciting for those listening. This is our episode.
No, I think this is fun. We're discussing some important stuff. And so Greg's going to screen share so that I can read what he's reading. Because the book I have is paper and the one I gave him is digital. And it's actually, I think, 80 years old, the one you're reading. So,
See the magic of water.
yeah, I don't even have that chapter. So go in what I've read. So go back. Yeah, see, magical physical training, step 1. See, practice, right? So the stuff that I've covered is precedes that section of the book. So we're not
So
actually supposed to go to those things.
this is where you ended.
Yeah. So I wonder if page 48, huh?
Yeah.
That's trippy. So the book you're reading is a different edition.
I wonder if there's like introduction that you have that I don't have in this version.
See, yeah, their diet. Keep going. The light, man. Oh, wow. The great secret of the tetragram. Go forward. Like, that's the very first. Wow. So the book you're reading is vastly different than the book
weird.
I'm reading.
And this is page 17.
Right. So see here, folks, this is here's that image, Greg, back
Right.
up on the page.
Right. So that image on here is here.
Right. And then turn to your page and then look at the difference. Look at mine on the screen.
Yours is just an index shot.
Yeah, it's just a header, and then the very first thing says the elements.
Oh, that's weird.
Well, and it's the same. It says about the elements there, right? But
Yeah, about the
so I'm gonna everything that has been created came into being through the effects of the elements. Is that what it says there? Your first sentence.
no. Everything which has been created, the macrocosm as well as the microcosm, consequently, the big and the small world have been achieved by the effect of the elements.
So mine says everything that's been created came into being through the effects of the elements. This applies to the macrocosm as well as the microcosm. So I'm reading a translation.
Yeah, we both are, obviously, because this guy was from Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
So that's
So
interesting. So
yeah.
the
Well,
I guess
there is like if you go on um, and try to buy this book, there's one version of it that's like hundreds of dollars because it's super rare. And I'll bet that the translation that we're reading right now online
is
is,
the $100 one
yeah,
or the cheap one.
no. Because what does it scroll down? What does it say the date is? The publication date.
71.
Okay. So no, edition
Oh,
1962.
yeah, 62 is the original. 62. Austria. That's where he's from.
So yeah, so but you know,
Oh, look, first edition, 1956.
right, so that's the one
That's
you're
pretty-
reading. No, right? Mine says first edition too. So again, this is important because subtle differences in the copies that you get change the meaning. So you got Audie V as the guy who writes the introduction to yours, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't think I have that one.
What's the ISBN number of yours?
Oh, it's long. 978-1 885928-12-2.
Totally different. Mine's 3-921-338-01-8.
And it looks like it was 1971. That's when yours was printed.
Right.
And let me look at mine real quick. So yeah, this one's first printing was 2001. So it's 30
wow.
years later.
Wow. Hey, did you actually scan books when you were working for them?
I when I worked for the archive, it's interesting. We're using the archive, and I happen to be wearing the shirt.
I know. I thought on.
I did enough of the scanning training to be able to scan a book, so that I understood the process. See, there's the copy I have.
I don't see one that's hundreds of dollars.
Well, you're looking at Amazon.
Oh, so you think if I just look elsewhere?
Yeah.
Like what, eBay?
There's different versions of it, right? The harder to find.
We are going down the rabbit hole.
Awesome. So, no, when I worked at the archive, see, that's the Corpus Hermeticum. That's another one. So there's so many different versions. There it is. See it? Fifth edition down
Oh,
below.
this one down here. Holy Christ.
$250. Fifth edition, 1987 hardback. So, and then scroll down even further. That's that one's first edition, 1962, and it's almost $1,000.
God.
So there's something about the versions of these books that is different. So,
Wow.
yeah. What could be of value to our listeners about this? Well, knowledge is handed down different ways, different generations. So the deeper you go, the more you'll find. Like we learned a lot today. Like the things I didn't know resulted from the fact that the way the book I have now is configured is different. And so someone, not Franz Barton, someone at his publishing company decided to change how they presented the translation. And like my dad's deeply into this stuff, and I'm curious about which version of the book he has
Mm.
because he's had his since the 70s.
Oh, that's interesting. He might have $1,000 book on his hands.
Well, and the fifth piece of one of the other pieces of my year, and what I would call the heralds of achievement, things that I'm really excited about and really mean something to me, was my dad's 81. His birthday was yesterday, and I've been working on a film about him, and we decided that I was going to purchase the rights to all of his writing, his creative work, and the contents of his library.
Wow.
So I own all of the copyrights and all of the intellectual property for his original writings. And I own all of the materials that are in his library in his office in the Boston area.
Huh.
And so, this book is part of my legacy. When he dies and he doesn't need his library anymore, I'm going to have access to some differing copies, some different perspectives, and including the amazing work that he's done as a magician. And for those of you who are curious, Joel A. Went, if you go to YouTube, he literally has hundreds of videos about different esoteric subjects, including the true practice of magic. And that's kind of this book, The Initiation into Hermetics, is the preparation for doing things that people would call magic. And in that sense, not like Harry Potter, but another form of it.
And he's not a fan of Rudolf Steiner,
Who isn't?
your father.
No, he's a huge fan of his.
Well, here he's got Overcoming Rudolf Steiner, Part 1.
Right. Well, he's read everything. He's studied him extensively for 30 years. He was part of Waldorf education. He was part of the Anthroposophical Society. And he's come to realize that just like any other form of thinking, you can fall into the grip of one individual's misunderstandings or their perspective. And so you don't, when someone becomes a cult leader figure and you only go through the lens of their thinking, you're going into a dead investigation, or at least a inert investigation. And the ultimate philosophy, I think, is that gnosis, or the process of spiritual awakening, is a living process. And there's 1,000 roads to nirvana, as they say, right? So
some say that, some say
there's only our way.
Yeah.
Beware those who would claim purchase over the ultimate wisdom.
Yeah.
They probably have an agenda.
So that's so interesting, because with Jesus, like, there is that famous quote, like, I am the way. And
well, it's sort of like that old thing. If a tree falls in the forest and there's no one there to hear it, does it make a sound? So who heard Jesus say this? And why did they wait 300 years to write it down?
Well, I think there's elements of any spiritual writing where, yeah, our ignorance doesn't convey the message clearly.
Right. And what can we do with like that statement? Like, we could decide that Jesus is a complete fallacy, or we can decide that there's something that was there that people did their best to try to communicate to the future, and that inherent in every human endeavor is the human condition. And so it might be fraught with things that at the time seemed like reasonable white lies or reasonable augmentation of the principle in order to achieve some kind of awakening for the benefactors of that, that writing. One of the things that I've come to in my own belief ideas about this concept of heaven and hell is that the reason the Christian idiom presents it as if we're going to die and go to heaven or die and go to hell is because it was a much simpler fable to tell, that if the way you create cause in the world, the way you show up in the world matters, because ultimately that creates a situation It's hard to explain karma, reincarnation, and how all of that affects us, and it then ultimately affects the garden where we live. And so, from my where I'm at in my life right now, I have this picture, which is that when you think of eternal life in the form of reincarnation, of coming back in another body with the same spiritual awareness, the same identity awareness, if you view that as a long-term prospect, and the place that you're coming back to is being mistreated, and it becomes more and more a practice of avarice and greed and shempa and destruction, then it becomes more and more inhospitable and more a hellish place. So we can see now from the vantage point that we are at that global warming or nuclear annihilation could create a physical sphere that if our souls incarnate into, we would experience as hellish, right? Burning, suffering, right? In entombment, in eternal suffering and burningness. So it's my view, it's a fable that brings in these ideas of what the Akashic principle is and the karma principle is into a fable that someone who doesn't have the ability to study esoteric wisdom for years and years and years to arrive at a sense of incarnation and all those things, to give them a concept of, well, how you treat people makes an impact, and how we treat our surrounding makes an impact. And it was serviceable at a time, but it became co-opted and corrupted in a control mechanism to get people to behave according to what we want, what the higher ups wanted them to do. So no matter how benevolent that those higher ups are, anytime that you're imposing your will on someone else, there's a breakdown in the fundamental principle of self-acquired wisdom, self-acquired cosmic wisdom. So the age-old argument is, well, maybe leading the flock and teaching them without them understanding everything is actually more helpful than trying to get them to understand something complicated. Eventually that peters out because it's basically saying people are stupid and we can't trust them to arrive at stuff, right? And when you look at the US Constitution, it's the same thing. Like there's this tiered layers of power, because if we just let democratic rule run the way, we can't trust that. Something bad will happen. So it's sort of weird. It's like this ultimate hedging of our bets. It's like even the Catholic Church says we can't trust God to manage humanity properly, right? They have to have rules.
Yep.
And what ends up happening is you get people like our friend Mike and my ex-wife who become obsessively opposed to any kind of spiritual awareness because they see it as such a mindfuck, such a terrible lie and manipulative thing that causes war and suffering. I think that's one of the things you and I both love about Buddhism, is it attempts to not be a religion, and it attempts to be something people can use as a tool in their daily life to try to minimize the emotional suffering that they experience and the suffering around them. And even that's flawed because there's all these hierarchies in Buddhism where if you practice enough or you practice right or you're not meditating right. Like how many of you have tried to go to yoga and felt like bad about your poses, right? And then not gone back. Right?
Well, that's the thing though. That's the inner world. That's really what I think it's all about, our inner world. And the story of someone being thrown into an oven and being totally relaxed and fine is about our inner world, how we can be in total hellacious conditions, but to us, they're not hellacious because we're in a state of peace.
So, right, each of us in this life has this opportunity to refine ourselves. And so the wisdom of the ages, like in this book, The Initiation into Hermetics, or the Torah, or the Bhagavad Gita, whatever gateway you choose to walk through, hopefully the nourishment that's encased in that the ancestors have tried to preserve for us, is the opportunity to become a better human being. And by better, that's like a judgment, right? So better can be interpreted, but in my interpretation, it's heart-centered, it's compassionate, right? It's kind, it's honest, right? It's knowing the difference between enough and too much in terms of materialism, right? And so to me, it's like, okay, I have this ability to continue the quest, to continue to discover my own true potential inwardly. And then as a result of that, make that available to anyone who I come in contact with in the form of human dignity, compassion, and love.